The heat here, it's not like anything you remember from before. It's the kind of heat that makes your lungs burn with every breath, the kind that turns your skin into leather if you're not careful, the kind that makes you understand why ancient cultures worship the sun as a god of destruction. August 2028, that's when it started, when the silence came and took everything from us. But here in Vegas, it took something more. It took our illusions, our pretenses, our carefully constructed fantasy that we could bend nature to our will. The wind is all you hear now, this constant low howl that cuts through the empty streets like a blade through flesh. It's the only sound left in a city that used to scream with life 24 hours a day, a city where silence was never supposed to exist. Just the wind, pushing the desert sand through broken windows, carrying the smell of decay and dust and something else, something wrong that I still can't name even after 2 years of breathing it in. Sometimes I think the smell is fear itself, the accumulated terror of everyone who died here when the silence hit, like their last moments got trapped in the air, and now we're all breathing in their death. The Strip is dead territory now. I mean truly dead. Not like those other places where you might find a survivor or two hiding in basements, trading canned goods and telling lies about government rescue missions that are never coming. No, the Strip is where hope goes to die, where optimism gets burned away by the relentless sun and whatever hunts in the shadows. Those massive casino towers that used to light up the night sky like artificial suns, they're just dark monuments now, tombstones for a world that partied itself into oblivion. The Luxor's Black Pyramid sits there like a warning from some ancient pharaoh who knew all along that hubris would destroy us. The Eiffel Tower replica at Paris is half collapsed, its iron framework twisted like it's reaching for help that will never come. And the Venetian's canals are filled with sand instead of water. The gondola is buried and forgotten, like archaeological artifacts from a civilization that ended overnight. I watched it happen, watched the desert reclaim what we stole from it. The sand came in waves during those first few months, pushed by winds that felt almost purposeful, almost alive, almost intelligent in the way they sought out every opening, every weakness in our concrete and steel fortresses. It buried the fountains at Caesar's palace first, those dancing waters that used to perform to Sinatra and Pavarotti, now just dry basins filled with sand and the bones of people who thought they could hide there. The water shows at the Bellagio went next, those choreographed jets that used to shoot hundreds of feet into the air, perfectly timed to music, perfectly designed to make you forget you were in the middle of a desert.
The sand filled those pristine marble lobbies where high rollers used to throw around money like it meant nothing, where cocktail waitresses in designer uniforms served $15 drinks, where the air conditioning was so aggressive you needed a jacket even when it was 110 degrees outside. I remember walking through the wind before the silence, remember the smell of expensive perfume and cigar smoke and new carpet, the sound of slot machines ringing and people laughing and dealers shuffling cards. Now when you walk in there, if you're brave enough or stupid enough to try, all you smell is rot and sand and that wrong smell I mentioned. And all you hear is the wind howling through the broken windows. And sometimes, if you listen carefully, something else, breathing in the darkness. The cars are still there, buried up to their roofs in some places, perfectly preserved under layers of fine desert sand like insects trapped in amber. BMWs, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, Maseratis, all those status symbols that mattered so much before. Now they're just metal coffins baking in the sun, cooking whatever's left inside them into something you don't want to think about. I saw a Rolls-Royce last week near the MGM Grand, just the top of it sticking out like a shark fin in an ocean of sand, its chrome grille still gleaming despite everything. There was a skeleton in the driver's seat, still wearing what looked like an expensive suit, still gripping the steering wheel like he thought he could drive away from the silence if he just held on tight enough. Makes you think about priorities, about what really matters when everything falls apart, about how all that money and status and power means absolutely nothing when the world decides it's done with you. But that's the thing about Vegas, right? It was always about illusion, about pretending that the laws of nature and economics and common sense didn't apply here. Build a paradise in the middle of a desert, one of the most hostile environments on Earth, pump in water from hundreds of miles away, water that other cities and farms desperately needed, run 1,000,000 lights 24/7 in one of the hottest places on the planet, keep the air conditioning so cold that people needed jackets indoors, while outside the pavement was hot enough to cook eggs. We thought we were invincible, thought that technology and money could overcome anything, that we could make it rain in the desert and turn sand into gold and build fountains and lakes and forests where nothing should grow. The silence proved us wrong. The silence proved that nature always wins in the end, that you can't cheat reality forever, that every dead eventually comes to with interest. There's an irony in it that would be funny if it wasn't so terrifying, if I hadn't lost so many people to it, if I didn't wake up every morning wondering if today's the day I finally make a mistake that gets me killed.
The City of Lights, the place that was so bright you could see it from space, the place that astronauts used as a landmark when they orbited the Earth, it's now the darkest place in America, maybe the darkest place on the planet. When the power grid failed, when the silence killed everything electronic in that first pulse, every circuit board and processor and microchip dying simultaneously like someone flipped a switch labeled extinction, Vegas went from being a beacon to being a black hole. The neon signs are dead, their glass tubes dark and cracked, their noble gases leaked away into the atmosphere. The slot machines are silent, their digital displays blank, their internal computers fried beyond any hope of repair. The LED screens that used to flash advertisements and show schedules and display odds are just blank rectangles of nothing, dark mirrors that reflect your own desperate face back at you when you dare to look. At night, when the sun finally sets and you think you might get some relief from the heat, the darkness here is absolute, oppressive, suffocating in its completeness. No moon reflects off these glass towers the way it should, like they absorb the light instead of reflecting it, like they've become doorways into some deeper darkness that existed before the universe began. The stars are bright, brighter than they've ever been without the light pollution, so bright you can see the Milky Way sprawled across the sky like a river of diamonds, but they just make the shadows deeper, make the empty streets feel more like canyons leading into hell. I've seen meteor showers here that would have stopped traffic before, celestial displays that people would have paid money to witness, but now they just remind me that we're alone, that we're small, that the universe doesn't care if we live or die. But the heat, God, the heat is what gets you first, what tests you before anything else has a chance to kill you. During the day, it reaches 130, sometimes higher, sometimes up to 140 in the direct sun, and there's no air conditioning, no way to escape it except to go underground or find one of the few places with enough shade to make a difference. The asphalt on the streets has started to melt in places, creating these sticky tar pits that will trap your feet if you're not careful. The glass on the buildings acts like a magnifying glass, focusing the sunlight into beams that can literally cook exposed flesh in seconds. Your water runs out faster than you think it will, faster than seems possible. Your body dehydrates in hours if you're not careful, sweating out moisture that you can't replace because the Colorado River doesn't flow anymore and Lake Mead is just a dusty memory. I've seen people die from the heat, watch them go through the stages like they're following a script written by the desert itself. First, they stop sweating, which seems like a relief until you realize it means their body's given up on cooling itself. Then they get confused, disoriented, talking to people who aren't there, having conversations with family members who died in the silence, or friends they left behind in other cities. They start stripping off their clothes because their brain is cooking and telling them they're cold, telling them they're freezing, and they laugh while they do it, this horrible cackling laugh that sounds like madness and despair had a baby. Then they collapse, convulsing for a few minutes while their organs shut down one by one, and finally, they go still. It takes maybe an hour from the first signs to death, and there's nothing you can do to help them once they pass a certain point. Nothing except give them water you can't spare and watch them die anyway. It's not a good way to go. Nothing about this is good. But here's the thing that most people who try to scavenge the strip don't understand. The thing that gets them killed every single time.
the lesson they learn too late to save themselves. The heat isn't the real danger. The heat will kill you, sure, but it's honest about it, straightforward, predictable. You can prepare for the heat. You can adapt to it if you're smart and careful and lucky. But what hides in those pitch-black casinos during the day, that's different. That's something new, something that shouldn't exist, something that the silence either created or released, or allowed to crawl up from whatever hell it's been waiting in. When the sun is at its highest, when the temperature outside is lethal, and the air shimmers with heat waves that make distant buildings look like they're underwater, those massive casino floors become refuges for things that shouldn't exist, creatures that belong in nightmares or ancient myths, or the kind of horror stories you tell around campfires to scare children. I don't know what they are, not really, and anyone who's gotten close enough to find out didn't make it back to tell us about it. But I've seen their signs. I've studied their patterns. I've become an unwilling expert in the ecology of monsters. I've heard their sounds echoing from inside the Mirage, from inside New York, New York, from inside the Excalibur and the Tropicana and the Flamingo. These wet, clicking noises, and something that sounds almost like breathing, but wrong, like lungs that don't work the way lungs should, like something trying to imitate human respiration, but not quite getting it right. They stay in the darkness during the day, in the deepest parts of the casinos, where the sunlight never reaches, where the sand hasn't penetrated yet, where the carpets are still intact, and the slot machines still stand in perfect rows, like soldiers waiting for orders. They nest there, I think, or sleep, or do whatever it is they do when they're not hunting.
At night, when it cools down enough for us to move, when the temperature drops to a merely dangerous 90 or 95 degrees, they come out. They hunt. The tracks they leave in the sand aren't human, aren't animal. There's something in between, or something else entirely, something that makes your brain hurt when you try to process what you're seeing. Long drag marks and impressions that look almost like hands, but with too many fingers, or maybe too few, or maybe fingers that branch and split and rejoin in ways that violate every rule of anatomy I ever learned. I've talked to other survivors, the few who made it out of their first week on the Strip and lived long enough to develop the paranoia and hypervigilance that keeps you alive out here, and we all have our theories. Some say it's mutations, that whatever the silence did to our electronics did something to biology too, changed things at a fundamental level, rewrote the rules of evolution and accelerated them so that what should have taken millions of years happened in months. Others think it's something that was always here, always waiting in the desert, sleeping in caves or buried in the sand, and we just built our cities right on top of their territory, woke them up with our noise and lights and hubris. There's an old guy, calls himself Prophet, used to be a dealer at the Rio before the silence, who swears they came from somewhere else, that the silence was an invasion, and these things are the cleanup crew, the exterminators sent to wipe out humanity before the real colonization begins. He says he's seen their ships, says they land in the desert at night and deposit more of these creatures. But Prophet also talks to ghosts and eats things he finds in the sand that no human should eat, so I don't know how much I trust his testimony. I don't know what I believe anymore. I used to be a rational person, used to believe in science and evidence and logical explanations for everything. I was a high school biology teacher before the silence, spent my days teaching teenagers about evolution and genetics and the scientific method. Now I've seen things that would make Darwin weep and Einstein tear up his theories. All I know is what I've seen, and what I've seen is enough to keep me out of those casinos unless I absolutely have no other choice, unless I'm so desperate for supplies or shelter or human contact that I'm willing to risk becoming whatever it is these things do to the people they catch. The Bellagio is the worst. I don't know why, but it is, and every survivor who's spent any time on the Strip will tell you the same thing. That beautiful Italian-inspired resort with its famous fountains, its gallery of fine art, its rooms that cost $1,000 a night, it's become something like a trap,
like those deep-sea fish that use lights to lure in prey, like an anglerfish with a glowing lure dangling in front of its mouth full of needle teeth.
You'll be walking past it at night, trying to stay quiet, trying to stay invisible, keeping to the shadows and moving fast, because staying still in Vegas means dying in Vegas. And you'll see it, a light flickering in one of the upper windows, or sometimes down in the lobby area, or sometimes in the casino floor itself. Just a brief flash of illumination where there shouldn't be any, where there can't be any because the power's been dead for 2 years. It looks like a flashlight at first, or maybe a candle, or maybe a lantern, and your brain immediately goes to other survivors, thinks help, thinks safety in numbers, thinks maybe someone found a generator or solar panels or figured out how to make batteries work again. That's what it wants you to think. That's exactly the reaction it's designed to trigger, like it studied human psychology and learned exactly which buttons to push to override your survival instincts. That's how it gets you, how it's gotten dozens of people that I know of, and probably hundreds that I don't. Because when you go in, when you follow that light deeper into the building, pushing through the sand drifts in the entrance, stepping over the bones of previous victims, ignoring every instinct that's screaming at you to turn around, it moves. The light moves. It leads you further into the darkness, away from the exits, away from the natural light, into the parts of the casino where the sand hasn't reached yet, where the carpet is still intact, and the slot machines are still standing in their perfect rows, and the air still smells faintly of cigarette smoke and desperation. And then the light goes out, just like that, without warning, without transition, and you're in the dark. Complete, absolute, suffocating darkness. The kind of darkness that feels physical, that presses against your eyeballs and fills your mouth, and makes you forget which way is up. And you're not alone anymore. You can hear it breathing, hear it moving, hear that wet clicking sound getting closer. You can feel something watching you, studying you, deciding which part of you to take first. Some people run, try to find their way back to the entrance by memory or luck or prayer. Most of them don't make it. Some people freeze, their bodies paralyzed by fear so primal it overrides conscious thought. They don't make it either. A few people fight, pull out whatever weapons they manage to scavenge, knives or pipes or broken bottles, and they swing wildly in the darkness, hitting nothing, wasting energy, making noise that only attracts more of whatever's hunting them. None of them make it. I lost 3 people I cared about to the Bellagio. 3 people who were family to me in the way that survivors become family when everyone else is gone.
Sarah went in first, said she heard voices calling for help, women's voices screaming about children trapped inside, said she could see lights moving on the 2nd floor, and she had to check it out, because that's who Sarah was, someone who couldn't ignore a cry for help, even when every logical part of her brain told her it was wrong. We waited for her for 6 hours, called her name until our throats were raw and bleeding, until we knew we were attracting attention from things we didn't want to meet. We stood at the entrance with our pathetic weapons ready, convinced she'd come running out any second, convinced we'd hear her footsteps on the marble floor. But she never came back out. We never even heard her scream. Then Marcus went in to look for her, because Marcus had been in love with Sarah since before the silence, and he couldn't accept that she was gone, couldn't live with himself if he didn't at least try. He was smart about it, had a rope tied around his waist with the other end secured to a parking meter outside, had a plan to search the lobby for 15 minutes and then get pulled back out whether he wanted to or not. He swore he'd just check the lobby and come right back, made us promise we'd pull the rope at exactly 15 minutes, made us swear on the memories of everyone we'd lost. We did pull the rope at 15 minutes. It came back light, severed cleanly about 20 feet in, the end of it wet with something that wasn't blood, but wasn't anything else we could identify either. We never saw Marcus again. And Jenny, God, Jenny was smarter than both of them, had survived longer than almost anyone else on the strip, had rules and protocols and backup plans for her backup plans. She knew better than to go into the Bellagio, had lectured the rest of us about it multiple times, had made us promise we'd leave her body in the sand if she ever got stupid enough to try. But she went in anyway, because she couldn't accept that they were gone, because she saw something in one of the windows that she swore was Sarah's flashlight, the specific pattern of clicks she used as a signal, 3 short flashes followed by 2 long ones. She said she was sure of it, said she'd bet her life on it, and then she did exactly that. She made it back out, but just barely, crawling through the sand with one leg twisted at an angle that made me sick to look at,
covered in that wrong-smelling wetness that we still don't have a name for. She wouldn't talk about what she found in there, wouldn't tell us what happened to her leg, wouldn't explain why her hair had gone completely white, even though she was only 26 years old.
She just kept saying the same thing over and over, rocking back and forth while we tried to splint her leg and get water into her. It was a trap. It's always a trap. The light is a lie. The voices aren't real. Sarah's gone. Marcus is gone. They're all gone, and they're using them. They're using their memories against us. They're inside our heads somehow. 2 days later, after her leg had gone septic and we'd run out of the antibiotics we'd scavenged from a pharmacy, after she'd been feverish and delirious for 12 hours straight, she walked back into the Bellagio on her own. Didn't say a word to any of us, didn't even seem to see us, just stood up on that ruined leg and limped straight through those grand entrance doors and into the darkness like she'd received a summons she couldn't refuse. We heard her screaming for maybe 10 seconds, this horrible sound that didn't even sound human anymore, and then everything went quiet again, except for the wind. So that's my warning to you, to anyone who might be listening to this recording, anyone who thinks they might try their luck scavenging the Vegas Strip, anyone who's desperate enough or brave enough or stupid enough to come here looking for supplies or shelter or other survivors. You can survive the heat if you're smart about it, if you move at dawn and dusk when it's coolest, if you find shelter during the peak hours, if you ration your water and know the signs of heat stroke, and accept that you'll be uncomfortable and miserable, but alive. You can even avoid most of the things that hunt here if you stay quiet and stay aware, and don't do anything stupid. If you treat every shadow like it contains a threat, and every sound like it's a warning. If you abandon the idea that you're the apex predator, and accept your new position near the bottom of the food chain. But if you see a light flickering in the Bellagio, if you see any light in any of these dead casinos when there shouldn't be power, when there shouldn't be anything alive in there at all, don't go in. Don't investigate. Don't try to be a hero. Don't convince yourself that it might be real survivors who need help, that it might be your chance to save someone, that this time might be different. It's not. It's never survivors. It's never different. It's a trap. It's always been a trap. The house always wins in Vegas, even now, even at the end of everything, even when the house is run by things that aren't human and playing games with rules we don't understand. The house always wins, and the only way to beat it is not to play.